Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me tonight for another Real Reflective Practice. I am your host, Dr. Anjali Pereira, and hello to YouTube and Facebook tonight. This is the first week I'm actually broadcasting to two platforms instead of one, so I'm really, really excited about that. Say hello to me if you are here and if you're listening. Apologies for the background tonight. I'm actually in the outbuilding at the bottom of my garden. Hi, Hannah. Thanks for coming. And we have not got around to decorating it yet, so it's a bit shabby. But I'm just experimenting with this location now that the days are getting warmer, so bear with. As you know, the theme for tonight is hope. So it would be great to know what the word hope brings to your mind, particularly in this current time of COVID-19 and with everything changing. So let me know in the chat. Hi, Sophia. So as usual, I would like to start off with a story. For me, the word hope is so evocative of my decision to leave medicine. When I was first considering leaving, it seemed like a completely unreachable goal. I felt hopeless. I didn't even know where to start. The only thing that I really knew was that I wasn't happy and I was desperate to get out. And at that time, the alternative careers scene for doctors, it wasn't really there in the way that it is now. So when I shared my feelings with other people, it was rare because it was such a taboo subject, but when I did share, even the people who were supportive and understanding about it, there was a definite absence of hope in their words. They would say to me things like, it's a really difficult career change. You'll probably struggle financially. What else can you even do, once you're a doctor? And my personal favorite was, every single job is hard. Every industry has its ups and downs. So what is the point in trying something else when it's only going to make you miserable in a different way? So that's probably the most hopeless piece of advice that I got. The only hope that I really experienced was a sinister kind of hope. I would hope that I would wake up ill or that my car would break down so that I wouldn't have to go into work. I would be told by other people, who had the best of intentions, that I should hold on to the hope that things could get better, that this was just a phase. So hope in medicine felt oppressive to me. And then one day I went to a Medic Footprints conference on alternative careers, and I heard this ex-dermatologist speak. She made the opening speech of the day, and her name was Dr. Evgenia Galinskaya. And I'd just like to read to you what I wrote on my blog after I heard Evgenia speak. Cambridge educated and clinically excellent, Dr. Galinskaya beat off fierce competition to land a registrar post in dermatology. Despite having worked so hard to get there and outstanding feedback from her colleagues, she found herself missing something in life and made the difficult decision to leave medicine and pursue a new life in career coaching. She spoke about her emotions at the time she left, and they resonated so strongly with me. Guilt about quitting, fear of leaving a steady salary and job security for an uncertain future, a sense of wasting her medical training. It was as if she were taking my current sentiments right out of my mind and giving them a voice. It was hard, she said, to convince those around her that leaving was the right option. Once a doctor, always a doctor, they said. In short, Dr. Galinskaya was funny, frank, open, and inspiring. I knew immediately that I had made the right decision, and my relieved heart opened up to the rest of the day. Now, I wanted to read that to you because that experience of your heart opening up to new possibilities and new opportunities, of being willing to embrace new ideas in spite of crippling doubts and anxieties, that day was the epitome of hope for me. That day gave me hope, and that former dermatologist gave me hope. So I am incredibly honoured and just overwhelmed to have that very person here with me as a guest today. Evgenia Galinskaya is a dermatology reg turned career coach for doctors and headhunter. She tried to leave medicine as an SHO, but she didn't have a plan or the hope that it would be better anywhere else. And she actually withdrew her letter of resignation at one point to continue with core medical training. But then she got into a dermatology training job, but left before she finished her ST3 year. And she is now so passionate about supporting doctors who are planning to leave medicine or going through some sort of career transition, especially into non-medical jobs and non-traditional options. So I am absolutely delighted to welcome her here tonight. Evgenia,
hello, hi, thank you. Oh God, that really brought tears to my eyes. Hearing you say this, that that I made such an impact on you, and certainly I have had doctors reaching out to me from time to time saying that, oh, I heard you at this conference and at that conference, and you really made me think about this. So it's really nice to know that I'm heard. So thank you so much for inviting me, Anjali.
Yeah, thank you for coming. This is fantastic to have you. Evgenia, we're talking about the theme of hope today, and it would be great to start by asking you about your transition out of medicine and what really were the moments of hope for you that helped you to go through that process.
Sure. Okay. So my transition was quite complicated and wasn't straightforward at all. In fact, as you mentioned, I did try to leave once when I was in ST1, and I didn't have a plan. It was literally on the spur of the moment that I thought, no, this is ridiculous. I can't go back to work tomorrow. So I literally wrote a letter of resignation that day and just handed it in to my director. And funnily enough, they didn't even question it. They said, fine, we can give you 1 week for like compassionate leave, sort yourself out and come back. So they didn't even take it seriously at the time. So I thought, no, this is my letter of resignation. So I did give it at the time, but that was a very scary place for me because suddenly I thought, well, I don't have a plan B. What do I do? And I then spoke to my previous clinical director from the previous job, and she said, you're crazy, go and withdraw the letter, take an UPI. And UPI, by the way, for anybody listening who is not a UK based physician, it's an out of program experience, so it allows you some time, usually 6 months out of program. They keep your job and you can do whatever you like. Well, not always whatever you like, but generally it's a time for other experiences, and then they'll take you back. So I was advised to just take an official UPI and not be silly. so that's what I did. So I think at the time, because I didn't have hope that I would find anything better, that seemed like it would be the way to do it. So that's what I did, and it was quite humiliating to go back to my, at the time, clinical director and say, actually, can I have my letter of resignation back because I've changed my mind? Please keep me, but I'll come back 6 months later. But then the thoughts of leaving medicine and the doubts never went away. So I think second time round, I thought I would leave it until I actually start in a specialty training. And of course, it would be silly to not start a dermatology program if it's such a competitive program, as you may know. And I managed to get it first time round on first application. So I thought it would be completely crazy if I didn't take that up, even though I did have doubts even then. And what gave me hope at the time was, okay, fine, finally, no nights, finally, no silly things that junior doctors are expected to do. Finally, I'm a reg, so surely it'll work out in the end. But very quickly, only a few months into the post, I realized that actually that doubt is not going away. And looking at my bosses, my consultants who were still there at their desks at 8 p.m. in the evenings, even in dermatology, which is supposed to be a derma holiday. When you look at your boss and you feel that you don't really want to have their job, that's when you start kind of questioning whether you should be doing something about it. So I think hope was an important element for me to get to that stage, to get to the registrar training. But in the end of the day, what I really learned is that hope in itself is probably not enough to keep you on any particular track, whether that's in medicine or going beyond medicine.
Yeah, it's kind of, hope has always kind of seemed kind of silly to me. It's something that I've struggled with, because it seems like, as you say, it's not enough, particularly in these major, life transition scenarios. And yet sometimes it's the only thing that you're really left with. And I definitely felt like that at points in my transition. And one of the things that that you talk about a lot in your work is this idea of the grass being greener on the other side. And that resonates so much with me, because at the time, that is exactly the argument that people would use to dissuade me from leaving medicine. This idea that, you think the grass is greener, but actually when you get there, you'll have the same problems. You're still the same person that you were before. And my struggle with that on so many levels is that it's true, right? I mean, I tend to be the kind of person who works to be I work to be happy where I am, and to live my given life. So I'm afraid of this idea, this seductive idea of, the grass being greener, and the kind of inevitable disappointment that follows when you realize that it isn't. So yeah, I'm wondering what your reflections are on that.
Yes, certainly it's a big thing for many doctors, including myself in the past, when they're trying to balance that decision making, whether another thing will be better, or at least if it's not better, would it be on par with what they have now? And this fear of disappointment is a big thing. Absolutely, something not to underestimate. So I think what I usually say to that is, firstly, you really need to know yourself, and you really need to know your values and non-negotiables, because when naysayers say that fine, you will probably leave, but you will end up in the same role, well, in a different role, but you will be also stressed and you won't have any work-life balance, especially in industry. And it's true that many jobs out there have that element of stress. Each job will have an element of stress, but in the end of the day, if you know your deal breakers and deal makers, that's what will help you to deal with those obstacles and those stresses. Because a clinical job where you're not happy in your day-to-day work, maybe because a lot of your values are not met, and a lot of the things that are important for you, you're not finding the outlet for. Whereas if you are in a different role, while also having a lot of stress, possibly, and not a big work-life balance perhaps, but if most of your values are nonetheless met, that's a different situation altogether. That's what will help you to overcome those struggles and not feel so desperate as you may feel in your current clinical role.
Yeah, I mean, I really love what you're saying about personal values, because that is a conversation that, frankly, we just don't have in medicine, right? I mean, I think as doctors, we have this pervasive idea that we all have the same values, because the NHS has a certain set of values,
Helping
right?
people is our main value, or should be our main value.
And to be honest, when I was a doctor, I wouldn't even known where to start with that whole values conversation, because frankly, I didn't know enough of myself. I didn't set the time or the space aside to do any of that work that you were talking about, knowing your non-negotiables, knowing, what you need and what your values are. And in medicine, you are not encouraged to do that either, are you?
Absolutely. It's really interesting. I had this conversation just the other day with a junior doctor who discovered that there was a career service in the university where they were studying, but we never, as medical students, at least in the UK, we are never told about career services. So we don't really have a chance during our medical school, unless we are actively seeking this out, to actually meet a careers advisor, for example. So from very early on, we expected to just step on this path and continue on the treadmill from when you're perhaps 16, 17, 18, when you're making that decision about, A levels. And then you go into your medical school, and there's no one there to really help you to bounce off ideas, because you're just on the treadmill, on the track.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and then it's really difficult to imagine a different reality. It's difficult to imagine the grass being greener when you just never have that conversation, right? I mean, for me, it turned out the grass absolutely was greener, a lot greener on the other side. And I think in hindsight, I've realized that my ideas around professional fulfillment were not egocentric enough. And by that, I mean this idea that, just because I'm an intelligent woman, a caring person, and I had the skill set to study medicine, that automatically meant that, medicine was the right career for me. And conversely, when it became clear to me that medicine wasn't right for me, I began to feel so lost, because I had this idea in my head that I shouldn't be unhappy in medicine,
It's a big
somehow
element of your identity.
exactly, somehow if you only try harder or went somewhere else or do something in a different way, that
Change
suddenly you'll be
specialty,
happy.
become a GP.
Exactly, precisely. That is exactly the kind of conversation I was having with other people and in my head. And I just found it very uncomfortable to have the sense of self, really, to say that this doesn't suit me. This isn't what I want. So I wasn't really allowing myself to have hope, if that makes sense.
Yes, it's very true that unless you surround yourself with kind of cheerleaders who really get you, it's very hard to find that space to respect your inner feeling that something is not quite right. And by cheerleaders who get you, the people I mean are probably those people who have gone through this. And just like for you, when I was leaving back in 2013, it wasn't really spoken about. There was a lot of stigma. It's quite strange to think about this, because it was only 7 years ago, so not even 10 years ago, but things really have changed. So just in the past 3-4 years, there has been a real explosion of portfolio careers, and it's really acceptable to have a portfolio career if you don't want to leave medicine completely. But also, even leaving medicine at least for some time, for example, by taking like a sabbatical, or leaving completely, it's become almost like more acceptable, and even if it's not acceptable, it's more talked about. Even those leadership and management fellowships that have been introduced since I was there in clinical practice, they encourage you to think about other things, not just clinical care. So I think one piece of advice, if I may share it now, would be to really surround yourself with those people who get you. They could be your friends and family, but a lot of the time, those people will try to push you, and because they have a fear that you will not succeed and they will have to pick up the pieces. I didn't have that with my family. My family, they were all really understanding. So I was really lucky, but I know for many doctors, family could be the biggest obstacle, actually. And equally friends, no matter how supportive your friends are, probably many of them will be saying, well, maybe just wait until you start specializing, maybe it'll be different, etc., etc. And they obviously wish you well, but in the end of the day, they probably have their own fear. You just don't know what fear they're going through themselves. So I think the best people would be to really to seek out those doctors who have done something like this, even if it's a doctor who is still in clinical practice, but maybe is doing something else on the side as a part of portfolio career. They will be aware of what's out there outside of the clinical bubble, and will probably be able to share with you the differences, so that you can start tapping into that thing that is out there, which is not what we are used to when we're still in clinical practice. So that would be my biggest advice, apart from knowing yourself, knowing your values, and really knowing why you want to leave. The other thing is, many doctors want to leave on the spur of the moment, when things have gone quite, bad in the workplace, whether that's environment or the sort of tasks they're doing. And it's easy to know what you don't want to be doing, but a lot of the time it's harder to tell what you do want to be doing. So it's fine. Just maybe stay with that thought that you know what you don't want to be doing, but you may not always know exactly what you want to be doing. And that's also why it's so useful to be speaking with other doctors who have taken the leap.
Yeah, it's interesting what you said about other people's fear influencing you when you're having these conversations. It's interesting to think of that in the context of hope, that they see themselves as giving you hope, perhaps. They see themselves as a hopeful influence, and yet that hope can come from a place of fear. So yeah, just an interesting reflection on what you just said there. We've got a comment coming through from Hannah. She says, after leaving medicine, I still felt and do feel stress and come across many difficulties in relation to my work. But for me, there was a stark difference between medicine stress and other work stress. The stress in the type of work I do now never feels crippling as it did in medicine.
How interesting. I felt that as well, because any job, whether that was me working full-time as a career coach a few years ago, but also I currently have a day job now. I have a full-time job in pharma recruitment, executive search to sound posh. And it can be really, really stressful, but it's so true. It's never felt crippling.
Yeah, no, I have a similar experience. I mean, the funny thing is that we talk about how other industries have their own problems and how other jobs are just as hard. And now me being in the business world, and you're obviously in the executive search world, I know that that's true. There are so many things that are really shit about being an entrepreneur, to be quite frank. It's really hard work and sometimes deeply frustrating. But as Hannah says, it's not a crippling stress. I mean, I think the difference is I love what I do. Even when I'm failing, even when I'm having a crappy day, or even when clients or bosses are being shitty, those are awful things, yes, and they do get you down, but they do not overwhelm me in the same way that medicine did, because I want to be here. It makes a ridiculous amount of difference to me, knowing really what my North Star is, I suppose, and having that sense of purpose. Really, it is so much easier to be hopeful when that is the case, right?
Yes, it's strange, because for many doctors who went into medicine, their sense of purpose was to make a difference in people's lives. Yet medicine has become so crippling. So I don't know what is your thinking about this? How does it become so crippling?
I mean, with the purpose narrative, I think, again, it harks back to everybody having the same set of values. I think my purpose was very woolly, I think, when I went into medicine. And I had that kind of, I want to help people, I want to make a difference sort of thing that everybody has in their head, or most people have in their head when they apply for medicine. But I never really took that further. I think now what I do does help people and it does make a difference in the world. But I don't think that I really thought about purpose in the wider context, that perhaps helping people wasn't just something that was to do with medicine, that, that there could be boundless other ways of helping people, that helping people was too wide an umbrella. And, my way of helping people perhaps wasn't being a doctor. And that was a real revelation to me.
Absolutely. And I think when you're 16, 17, 18, when you're at that point, choosing your A-levels, choosing your degree, if all you have is knowing that you want to help people, and if you've done really well so far, doing medicine or nursing or teaching, they're the broad kind of career paths that you will have heard of. So I think that's why many people end up on those paths. But it's so true. There are so many ways. I think take pretty much any job out there. you can probably think about it as in a way that it's helping people in some way.
Mm.
It may not be helping patients, but that job is probably helping somebody.
Mm.
So I think it was a really important realization for me that I could be helping um, in a different role rather than just doing one-to-one patient care. And I often tell myself that even now in pharma recruitment, I'm actually helping many more patients by recruiting executive teams for pharmaceutical and biotech companies that then make strategic decisions for that company that is producing treatments or medical devices for far many patients than I would have ever been able to treat as a clinician one-to-one. So in a way, indirectly, I am actually helping many more people than I could have done as a clinician, or at least at least that's been my little story for myself to justify, because I still ask myself, should I have maybe tried harder?
Mm.
It's strange, it's been 7 years, but I sometimes ask myself. But having said that, I've never had doubts, not doubts, I've never had regrets.
Regrets, yeah. Yeah,
Regrets,
I'm the
no,
same.
not once. So
Mhm.
that's really reassuring thought. And interestingly, many doctors who have made that leap have said the same. They've never had regrets. It's been for many, the journey has been kind of up and down, and for many, their journey hasn't been straightforward. But overall, I'm yet to speak to a doctor who had major regrets and wanted to go back to clinical practice. It's not unheard of, but I would say it would be an exception than the rule.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I certainly, I mean, that is my story up and down, exactly what you said. And it's interesting you saying that you having moments of kind of doubt and that negative self-talk, I suppose, because I think that's such a big part of it. For me, on some level, I thought, well, I just don't deserve it. I don't deserve to have fulfillment at work. I had this internal narrative saying that I'm being demanding. I'm asking for too much, and really that fueled the sense of hopelessness in medicine. It was just this really vicious cycle of saying to myself, yeah, finding purpose and fulfillment and happiness in work is just not, it's not something that I have a right to, and that's really
Yeah.
sad when you think about it like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's actually quite dark in my room. Would you mind if I go and turn the lights on, and maybe you could respond to some comments? I see some more
Oh yeah,
comments coming through.
absolutely. No, no,
Thank you.
it's not a problem.
Apologies for this.
It's okay. So we got a comment coming through from Hannah saying, I had the exact same thought process, Anjali, when I chose to leave medicine. Medicine isn't the only way to help people, was my exact internal narrative. Yeah, exactly. It's hard because on some level that logically, but on another level, there's this narrative of medicine is the pinnacle. It's the noble profession. It's everything. It's the best thing you could possibly be. And certainly if you come from certain cultural backgrounds, and I speak from experience here, yeah, that can be really, really difficult to fight against. And you feel like you're constantly justifying yourself that, yes, I am still worthwhile. I am still doing things that are worthwhile, even though I'm not a doctor. So yeah, it's great that Hannah that you.
Yeah, it's interesting for me. After some quite long period of peace, I suddenly had all those stirring emotions coming back in early April, when the GMC reactivated my license to practice so that I can go back to the front line. And that was a big trigger for me, because I suddenly started questioning, who am I to be happily in executive search now, when there are so many people out there who I could be helping as a clinician with the skills that I learned for 6 years, etc., etc. So there was a big gremlin kind of just sitting like, like that. So it was actually quite hard that day when I actually had to write back to the GMC to opt out. I had a lot of it was an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, no, I mean, same for me. And I know I've heard you talk about the gremlin before, the gremlin of hopelessness. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit more about that gremlin and what it feels like.
Well, I think every single person will have their own gremlin. So it's I first learned about this the kind of the notion, the concept of a gremlin when I was undergoing coach training, which was after I left ST3 in dermatology, and I didn't have a solid plan even then. So this was my second successful attempt to leave medicine. So I went straight into 1 year training in coaching, and they introduced this concept of a gremlin, that it's that inner critic that will activate at really awkward times and will tell you, who are you to be thinking this, who are you to be doing this. It's that critical voice that all of us have from time to time, some people more often than others. And I think it's also very important now that we are considering alternative careers and thinking about hope when you're considering these really important life-changing decisions. It's really important to get to know your gremlin and to be able to not necessarily shut it down, but kind of be kind to it.
With it.
Yes, have conversations with it and be kind to it, because it starts speaking when there is the greatest fear. It's trying to protect you. So it's trying to keep you where you're most comfortable, comfort zone. You may not be that comfortable in your current clinical role with all those frustrations, and you may be really unhappy, but in the end of the day, that's all you know, perhaps. And that's where the gremlin will want to keep you. And therefore, before you make that hopefully informed decision to leave, you will need to get some kind of partnership arrangement with your gremlin.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
And
I mean,
the way to do it is really to get to know yourself, really spend the time on self-discovery and understand why you're doing this. So really understand all the push factors, but also try to understand your pull factors. So hopefully you will be pulled towards something in particular. You may not know yet what it is, but it's important to educate your gremlin that there are the push factors that are making you unhappy, but also there will be the pull factors that are bringing you hope.
Yeah, I love this idea of, I mean, it's really an important part of my practice now, is, you know, being, as we said, in conversation with those gremlins, you know, and not, I think there's a lot of rhetoric around getting rid of unhelpful emotions and, you know, ejecting the parts of ourselves that don't serve us. But those parts of ourselves are part of us, right? They're part of who we are. And we can't just reach into ourselves and remove them. You know, that's impossible. We need to be engaging with them, and we need to be working with them to kind of come to a better understanding and a better place with them. So I really love that idea. A comment from Sophia coming through saying, so true, it actually took me a long time to realize and accept that there are many ways of helping people, and you can help people and help yourself without having to sacrifice the one for the other. And Hannah's replied saying, exactly, Sophia, the issue is no one tells you that when you're 18 and deciding what to do. You have to figure it all out for yourself after you go through all the crap. So true.
Yes. And I think what's also important to once you realize that it is possible to help in so many different ways, perhaps why so many doctors get overwhelmed and find their role crippling is because nobody went through those values which we talked about before and other important things to understand better where they function at their best. And when I work with my coaching clients, and especially in the past, I always advised people to have a more structured approach to this. So there's an acronym PRET. So P is for people, I is for rewards, E is for environment, and T is for tasks. So I always encourage anybody who is going through that self-discovery stage to really understand who are the people you would like to be working with, whether that's customers or clients or patients you're working for or your work is serving, or it could be colleagues. It's very important because for many doctors, they actually love the caring element, interacting with the patients, but it may be that they don't like specific colleagues they're working with, and there may be a particular pattern in terms of those colleagues, why they've ended up with those colleagues. It could be, I don't know, for example, surgical specialty with really kind of interesting egos there, for example. So P is for people, I is for rewards. It's very important to think about not only the financial elements, but some other things that you would consider as rewards. For example, would you like your employer to be trusting you when you're taking leave, and you wouldn't have to justify why you need that day off, and actually take that day off with maybe 24-hour notice, which is impossible in the NHS, but it's actually much more common in industry. This could be a part of a reward, even if we're not talking about the financial rewards. For some other people, rewards could be that the employer will pay for courses or for professional development opportunities like conferences. Again, in medicine, all of these things, mostly you will have to pay yourself. Other rewards could be, I guess, emotional rewards. What is the greater cause that you would like to be working for? So it's a multifaceted thing to think about, in terms of rewards. So that's PRE. E is for environment. So whether that's would you like to be a part of a multinational corporation or a big hospital, like some people may feel that they're being a cog in the wheel, or would you like to work in a startup where you're actually making tangible decisions as a part of a very small but highly engaged, enthusiastic team? And the environment you will need to consider the sort of hours you're doing, the flexibility of those hours, the type of working environment, whether your employer is allowing you to work remotely or you will have to always be there in person. All these things will be important as well. And then T is for tasks. What would you be on a Sunday? Imagine that you thinking about your week ahead. What are the tasks that you are looking forward to doing, or what are the skills that you're looking forward to using or developing in that week? It's very important to be thinking about helping people, but in the context of these 4 themes that will be really important for you. So that's what I always encourage my clients, or anybody who asks me for advice about moving out of clinical practice, to really nail down these 4 things.
That's so funny. When you're talking there, I recognize now I would be able to do that, no problem. But in medicine, when I was first considering leaving, because I had only ever been a doctor, if you asked me any of those questions then, I would have really struggled to answer any of them. And I think I did start to have that conversation, and it did get easier as I transitioned. But yeah, it's that not knowing really anything about what I wanted, about myself, about the world out there, what was available out there, that had me feeling so uncertain. Uncertainty was this huge thing that seemed to really crush hope for me. And so I guess it's interesting to put this concept of hope in direct opposition with the concept of uncertainty, because hope is something that you have when you don't have any answers, right? You don't have any assurances that your choices are going to work out. And medicine, I think maybe this is so pertinent because we are a profession that is so based on certainty, perhaps.
Yes.
You know, from the get-go, you know what the hierarchy of medicine is. You know what your career milestones are going to look like. You know what you're going to do until you retire, basically. You know roughly when you're going to do it, and you know it's a highly respected profession with a certain degree of security and financial security and all of this kind of stuff. So when you remove all of that certainty, certainly for me, all I was left with was hope.
Yeah.
And if you're not a naturally hopeful person like I am, I'm not at all, you really then have to work hard to remain hopeful, because the consequences of losing hope are so dire, right? I mean, you slip into despair and depression. I certainly felt those things. We've all seen the rates of physician suicide. So yeah, I guess my question for you is, what strategies can we engage to maintain that sense of hope?
Sure. So I think hope allows you to step into the unknown, but it's the roadmap of some sort. It doesn't have to be a very comprehensive plan, but you do need to have some roadmap to help you with the bearings on that journey. And to have that roadmap, what would it look like? I think it will look like something different for each person. For those people who are happy with taking risk, it may be something very vague at that point, maybe like for yourself, when you didn't have a plan and you stepped out and you just hoped for the best, and actually you tried this and tried that and saw what was what you liked most and just kind of did more of that. That's one strategy, and it's still a type of roadmap where you just decide for yourself that I will step out. It doesn't matter that I don't know now, but I will just try this, see if it works out, try something else if it doesn't work out, and off you go. For some others who are more risk averse, they may need a more comprehensive plan. And I think for both of these types of people, I think doing that PrEP exercise is really important. Understanding your values and knowing why you're leaving or why you want to be leaving is really important. But some kind of roadmap is really important. And as I said before, it's very important to surround yourself with people who get you. And even if they're not people who you know from your own network, reach out to those people and have conversations, because they could become your informal mentors, and they could become people who actually support you along the way when you're about to give up.
Yeah, no, I mean, really good advice there. And I think I was very much the former that you mentioned. I was one of those who jumped off a cliff and just hoped that I would learn to fly on the way down. I didn't have a plan at all. And definitely, I think that choice was driven by a sense of desperation. I almost felt like I'm so desperate. I want to leave medicine so much that, even with the absence of certainty, I am willing to turn to hope, because the alternative is misery. My desperation left me only two paths, really. I could either stay and fall into despair, or I could leave in hope. So yeah, I definitely identify with that first type of person of leaver that you talked about. And I don't know, I wonder, are our circumstances, do circumstances make us more likely to embrace hope, I guess? That's what I'm trying to say.
I think exactly. It probably depends on where you are in your life journey. I think maybe, certainly from speaking to my clients, or even people who are just reaching out to me who don't become clients, I don't want to generalize, but generally, younger people, sort of junior doctors, or maybe medical students who are just coming up to qualification, or FY1 doctors, they often feel that they can just go and experiment. So it may be less of a risk for them, but for many, it's still quite crippling to be thinking about such a big decision. But I find that people who are already with families and mortgages in their 30s, 40s, and beyond, often, who already have quite good income, for example, they're already a fully fledged GP, possibly GP partner, it's so much harder to be thinking about taking risk and giving this all up. I think my take-home message would be, you don't have to, do clinical practice on a Friday and then on Monday start a new job. Okay, you could be testing and trying as a part of your kind of portfolio career, perhaps. So I think that will also give you hope that it's doable, testing, trying, growing your network. And then when you actually feel you've got those bearings and you kind of, you feel some foundation, then making the leap will be much easier.
Yeah, baby steps and experimentation.
For those, of course, for those who are not comfortable to just take the leap, because we're all different. So
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think for me, I think of hope as a radical act, really, because I think I struggle so much with hopelessness. It feels like choosing to make a major life decision based on hope is a kind of signal as to how important that decision must be to me. I think actually it was Martin Luther King who said, I've got the quote written down somewhere, we must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope. And I think that's right in the sense that the finite disappointment is a given, it's an inevitable consequence of living, right? There are things that are going to disappoint us. And unfortunately, sometimes those things are big, like the career that we chose when we were 17 and studied God knows how long to get to, and is so much a part of our identity. That is a huge disappointment when that doesn't work out. And yeah, the only real protection we have against that is hope, in a way, right?
And for anybody who is there thinking that I don't want to make a mistake, choosing the wrong career and giving this all up, putting medicine behind, just look at me. I've now changed careers twice. And probably what I'm doing now is not the last thing I'm going to be doing in my life, because you will learn whatever you step into. It could be just a temporary job, or it could become a career. You just don't know. But even if it does become a career, it could be a career for 10 years or maybe even 5 years, and then you may choose to move on to something else.
Absolutely. Evgenia, thank you so much for joining me tonight. It's been just brilliant to have you. If people want to get in touch with you, where can they find you?
I think the best is on Facebook. So I have a Facebook page, Non-Clinical Careers for Doctors. It probably will become something else as a part of rebranding later on this year. But for the time being, it's Non-Clinical Careers for Doctors. And if you could maybe share the hashtag, I think you've done it already, and underneath this video.
Absolutely.
And the email button, so anybody can just email me.
Absolutely, yeah, excellent. And those details will be in the show notes below as well, folks. So thank you again, Evgenia. Take care.
Bye. And everybody listening to this, please don't lose hope. It's very, very important. But at the same time, there will be other things that are important for you specifically. But hope is a big thing when thinking about career change.
Brilliant. Take care. Speak soon.
Bye.
Oh, wasn't that an amazing conversation? I absolutely loved talking to her. Thank you everyone for coming tonight. Just one quick announcement before I head off, actually. Next Monday, I'm taking a week off live streaming for the bank holiday, so I'm gonna have a little break. But I will be back on June 1st with entrepreneur Katie Romero-Finger, and we'll be talking about the theme of change. So I hope you have a lovely couple of weeks. Enjoy your bank holiday. Perhaps you might use it to do a little reflective practice of your own. And if you do, then do let me know how you find it. You can at me on Twitter or Facebook at Disillusioned Med. As always, please like, share, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And yeah, I will speak to you on June 1st. So take care, stay inspired, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.